I'm Dennis Pelletier, and we're going to be tying a little fly known as the Cyrstal Critter. Here's an example. The history of this fly is I was scanning Google images looking for an albie fly. I wanted something that would sink quickly because whenever fish are blitzing, most of the action is not on the surface, it's down below the blitz. So I wanted something, I usually use an intermediate line. So this seemed to fit the bill. There was no recipe, it was simply a picture of the fly and it was for sale. So I kind of punted and tied what looked like the fly in the picture. The fly in the picture used a white crystal chenille, and for some reason I had tied up some using this Estaz and in Chartreuse. I guess the old saying, if it ain't Chartreuse it ain't no use, but this turned out to be the winner. And I've caught not only albies with this, but bass, and specifically bass that are blitzing. I have kind of a theory that when fish are in a feeding frenzy, which we call a blitz, if you throw a fly that matches the hatch, for lack of a better term, you're just throwing a fly that looks like a lot of other bait fish, thousands and thousands of other bait fish. So I tend to throw something that stands out, something like perhaps lemon and lime, flatwing, something that is actually. So I think what happens, or in my theory, is that the fish are in a frenzy, they're instinctively feeding. So this is kind of an impulsive, they jump at it impulsively. And I've had success over the years following that theory, so this kind of fit the bill. Okay, so we're going to start with a mustad stainless steel 1/0 hook. And another thing that I might add is the idea of a hook being sticky sharp. Never assume when it comes out of the container that it is sticky sharp. And it's a good time to do it now than once the fly is tied. So I always run it on a file. And sticky sharp means when you put it on your fingernail like that, it literally sticks. And of course crushing the bob, which makes it easier to remove from the fish and make you very happy you did it when that 30-knot gust of wind takes your fly line and hits you in the back of the head instead of your intended target. Okay, so let's get started here. Let's start with a 240 flat weave thread. Now this sort of looks like a clouser, but it really isn't. Okay, so I'm not really concerned with leaving a lot of material, a lot of room up front, like you would normally, up by the eye, like you would normally do with a clouser. Instead, I want to maximize the length of my shaft here. So I'm gonna. What happened to that little? There it is. So I'm using. Whoops. I'm using these lead painted eyes, size large, and what I usually do is I'll kind of hold it up to the eye like that and use that as a measurement as to where it's going to go, and then I'm going to make two little lumps on either side to sort of sit the, I don't know if you can see this, to sort of sit the eye in. Okay. So you notice, unlike a clouser, I'm right up at the eye. And just do some crisscrossing here. And underneath a few times to cinch it up tight. Okay. And maybe a little UV. By the way, I love this loom UV. Okay. I'm going to start. Now, I decided to tie this in flat wing style, which means rather than tie the feathers in this direction, I'm going to tie them flat. Okay? And once again, remember, this is basically a jig. And I think by tying the feathers in flat wing style, it helps that jigging action. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the fish is looking up at the silhouette in this direction. So I think by tying flat wing, you're giving the fish a better silhouette when you're looking upward. So I'm going to start with some white bucktail and to form the base. And whenever I form a base on a flat wing, I like to use the bucktail that's down at the end here. It's a little bit stiffer and it flares a little better. So I'm going to start with that. Not a whole lot, but and I'm going to go 1.5, almost 2 times the length of the shank. Okay, and I'm going to tie it right in up to the top here to give it a little more body, a little more thickness in the body. Oops. Let's start over again there. And I'm going to use my thumbnail to kind of flare it out. Alright, now somewhere here I've laid down, okay. Now this is mainly to prevent fouling, okay. I'm going to use a stiffer hen hackle feather here, and I'm going to tie it in facing upwards. This is to prevent fouling. When you're tying in feathers flat wing style, tie them in loosely at first and then give them a little tug, and it flattens the feather nicely on your fly. This is basically a one feather deal, like I said. Now, I'm going to use 3 strands of crystal flash, but when I double it up, when I tie it in, there'll be six strands in all. We'll see what I mean in a minute. Oh. Alright, so I'm gonna double this up. So now I have 6 strands going back there. Let them hang out a little bit. Okay, and now I'm going to tie in a nice full I have this cape, I don't know where I got it, but it's made up of these very full feathers. So turns out these are pretty good. I'm going to leave a little bit of the marabou-like fluff on it. And I'm going to tie this in now, curve side down. Again, a few loose wraps, tug on the stem, flatten it out, tie it in. Okay. Now, from this saddle hackle, I have a long, thin feather that's going to end up being palmered through the body. So I'm going to tie that in at about 45 degrees. And a little trick that a friend of mine named Ed taught me is to leave about a 1/4 inch or so of bare stem when you're palmering in something like this. It just helps to get you started. Okay, so that's ready to go. And now the Estaz, Chartreuse Estaz. That set up here. Okay. And we're going to wind that down the shank. This is really long, fuzzy. It's longer than I've used in the past. And finally, we're going to palmer this through. And there we have it. Tie it off. And hit it with some Here's the Cyrstal Critter. Again, albies, bass, great for blitzing fish because it is a flashy fly, and I think they just sort of instinctively hit it. But I've had a lot of success with this little guy. Thank you.